on TVC Breakfast. As usual, we'll begin with the Nation newspaper this morning on politics. Again, rumbling in the PDP deepens. I don't know exactly what is still going on here, but I guess the PDP is trying to find their foot, to present a strong challenge come 2027. Because if the rumbling is deepening, where is it getting to? At
this time. But I mean, finding their footing, I don't think that will be the case of the PDP that has been there for a while now. As against other parties, they should not be finding their footing at this point. I think we are seeing so many persons dissatisfied with some of the decisions made in the party. Like we saw last week, it got to a point where they now started throwing blows at each other about, a particular position. And so it's great and it's very important that, stakeholders come together.
Exactly.
But we've always seen stakeholders coming together. And so I'm wondering what else do we need to do actually to ensure that the PDP stands as a formidable opposition like other parties in Nigeria? Indeed,
because we saw what the Progressive Governors Chairman said yesterday, Hope Uzodimma, was talking about the strength of opposition parties because they play a role in keeping government in check, But that'll be it for that. There's something else at the bottom of the Nation. House softens stance on tax reform bills. Seems like, the government is listening to the NLC and indeed Nigerians as a whole. But there's a beautiful picture story right there on the Nation. Olamide, if you could see that. That is our president in handshake with the officer of Google. Our president is looking quite young in there. I like that.
Right. I mean, this is a good one, and it probably indicates that we will be expecting more innovation as regards, technology and all of that in Nigeria. But it's not news for this administration, especially. The president has always said that, we have youth who are invested in technology, and of course, he will make good use of that in the country. And
that is how we'd let it off for the Nation this morning.
And very quickly to the Leadership newspaper, which is, of course, starting with the PDP dispute, I would say. Anti-party activities, crisis brews in the People's Democratic Party over disciplinary committee. Otom threatens legal action, demands apology within 48 hours. Committee adjourns for 2 weeks. Abia PDP insists on Wabara's suspension. You see, there's so many, needs from different sides of the party. They need to get to, an agreement in time. And a report here shows, that's by the right, 20,000 Nigerians killed in 4 years. I'm interested in that report as to, what may have caused this. Is it a health concern? Is it a security issue? Another case here, 4 killed as Benue records 36 Lassa fever cases. That's a sad one there. But of course, the health sector will be on top of its game to ensure that, this does not happen again. But that's what we have on the Leadership this morning.
There's a lot going on the Punch newspaper this morning with the head that Tinubu's re-election, ACF, others tackle Ganduje over no vacancy comment. Babashir hints at North's consensus candidate as ACF, Mohammed counter APC chair. 2027 dancing in the grass, like I like saying. But at the top nameplate of the Punch, this is on tariff hike. Labour subscribers plan telcos shut down from March 1st. All right, we'll be here to see how that goes. And on tax reform, reps divided as bills kill first reading. Okay, and federal government bans trucks as tanker fire claims 493 persons. Again, we've seen a record, increase in tank explosion. And so the federal government is taking all-out war to stop that from continuing because this is becoming a nuisance. But that would be it for the Punch newspaper.
And to the New Telegraph, NLC declares war on telcos, direct boycott of services till month end. They also threaten a total shutdown March 1st if 50% tariff raise is not reversed. They're saying that the hike execution is a betrayal of their trust. On the bottom of a New Telegraph, at last, PDP recognizes Ude Okoye as the national secretary. We see something different on another paper as to that position. Federal government reviews plan to counter violent extremism, says it is a threat to national security. Of course, that is a threat. Nelson, like I've always said, they also need to deal with the issue of, ideology as against, the use of weapons and all of that. The root causes of some of these issues are probably poverty, which are being utilized by some of these bandits to, recruit some people into their own movement.
Exactly.
Also needs to be addressed from the ideological position.
Which is why we always talk about governments not only rely, or we not only relying on the federal government alone. There's a state government, there's a senator representing each of these constituents, there's a House of Reps, there's a local government chairman, and there are even councillors.
I mean, all that is still under, government bodies and all of that. Now,
but we always point only to the federal government, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I understand.
It trickles down, so everybody should put their house in order.
Right. We're also talking about, taking attention away from the center. So this is coming at a good time. However, I'm also focusing on, religious leaders, parents, who play an active role in, bringing some of these ideologies to these children where they at a point begin to inculcate some sort of, indiscipline. So it's very important that all stakeholders, school teachers, parents, and all of that come together.
Well, I mean, believe me, I understand what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. But I've traveled, to the north, different parts of the north. There's so much parents can relate to. If you're living in an environment where poverty is prevalent, what exactly can you say to the child that would make him not go for 5,000 naira as a bait?
Right.
Really.
I think this has also been utilized. But another story on the New Telegraph. 40 million Nigerians are drug addicts, says the NDLA. That's very worrisome. But that's what we have on the New Telegraph this morning.
Something came to mind, but I don't want to say that. The News Direct is our new next paper this morning. Again, something on the telcos conversation. Telecoms, NLC declares telecom boycott over 50% tariff hike, urges workers to disconnect daily. Now, I don't know how many workers will so do until whatever happens. But there's something at the top nameplate of the News Direct this morning. Residents block highway, protest renewed bandit attacks in southern Kaduna. We need to look at that before it becomes a bigger issue on our hands. That will be it for the News Direct.
To Nigerian Tribune, tax reform bills survive in reps, scale second reading. Lawmakers are backing the NGF's position on the VAT sharing formula, 15% equity. Another story here says Senate scraps special fund account for regional development commissions, NYSC. I mean, we've seen a whole lot of reactions to that. And once again, the IBEDC reconnect the UCH, that for electricity. I think we took that story yesterday. There was a whole lot of back and forth on
about that, yes.
But that's what we have on Nigeria Tribune.
All right, now, the Daily Trust is our next paper. Reps want contentious sections expunged. This is, again, still around the conversation of the tax reform bills. Seek clarity on conflicts with constitutional provisions, oppose inherent tax, and propose VAT reduction. And something else at the top nameplate right there, 49 years on Murtala's legacies still, 49 years on Murtala's legacies still visible, okay? And bandits abduct 16 burn houses, crops in Kaduna community. Something on insecurity which we cannot allow to fester. But I think that's where we'll let it off for the Daily Trust.
And quickly to Daily Independent newspaper. And it's, of course, President Tinubu plans to mainstream AI to expand digital infrastructure. I'm sure that's a reaction to his meeting with the Google
executive.
Lead. Yeah. Gunmen opened fire on soldiers in Rivers community. That's a very, sad one. Very worrisome in terms of, security. But another one here, Catholic bishops decry rising food insecurity, herdsmen attacks. But that's what we have on Daily Independent this morning.
The blueprint is our next paper. Something here on security. Troops neutralize Kajala, Nafransa, Dogon, Dakwala, others in Zamfara and Sokoto. All right, it says over 40 enclaves destroyed. Some good news right there. Wike visits contractors, assures compensation for affected structures. All right, the Minister of the FCT trying to mend fences right there. And a little bit at the bottom of the blueprint, PDP crisis festers, autumn, Ayao, others shun disciplinary committee. Remember last week we took a story that there were summons to the panel, but this is saying they didn't heed that call. But that's how we let it off for the blueprint.
And to the first newspaper, dark days again. Power grid collapse plunges Nigeria into darkness twice in 2025. Nelson, this is another big issue. Another story here, Baba moves on fast. Sparks romance buzz with a Edo lawmaker after Annie splits. I think I'll pass this on to you.
Well, let's move on fast, shall we?
I mean, they're adults, of course. They're old enough to make their decisions. Indeed. So we can't just, leave it there.
It's a private matter.
Yes.
It's just that
let's leave it private, even though we have it on the front page of the papers this morning. But that's what we have on the first news.
All right, the Hope newspaper is our next one this morning. Ondo, Ilaje communities reject inclusion in proposed Ijebu state. Okay. Area's traditional rulers take case to Governor Yedatiwa. Royal fathers caution Ogun Waterside local government against encroachment of Irokun community. Well, they're rejecting Ijebu state. Well, that's something they have to discuss internally before that even comes to a national table. But that'll be it for the Hope this morning.
And to Platform Times, reps probe alleged certificate racketeering in tertiary institutions. And Nelson, a story here which says a gun runner nabbed in Plateau says he was paid 50,000 naira to smuggle ammunition. That's a source of concern. Indeed. NSAS mark beginning of irresponsible protest in Nigeria. That's according to Boala. National grid tripped, not collapsed. The TCN, he's responding. That's what we have on the Platform Times.
This Nigeria is our next to be considered this morning. Something now on health. Federal government targets elimination of cervical cancer by 2030. To concentrate on preventive measures, plans to extend screening, immunization to rural communities. Some good news right here again. Cervical cancer and other forms of cancer is threatening the lives of a lot of Nigerians, and so the federal government is placing a mark on this. And last week we had one of the front players in that sector come speak to us on what the government is doing. So a lot is happening. There's hope at the end of the tunnel. Wike lauds communities for supporting projects execution in the FCT as UNIZIC begins probe as female student bites lecturer. While nuns are condemning the act. I can't imagine what happened between the lecturer and that lady.
I mean, I hear a whole lot of things these days.
But she took to defense.
Right, she took to, well, I won't not say it's defense at this point. I think Veronica and Ibrahim also spoke about that on the Trending Now segment. Yeah. But that will take us finally to the sporting life. Nwambali going through a lot, burdened by parents' deaths. That's sad. Rwanda versus Nigeria, 2 chartered flights to airlift fans, orders for Super Eagles World Cup clash in Rwanda. Balogo says, I'm not done with the Super Eagles, denies report of his retirement. Those are the major stories on the sporting life this morning.
Before we get over to Veronica and Ibrahim, is biting, is biting, you know, a form of defense for ladies. And because that's not the first time I'm hearing this, in fact, since I was a child.
But that is not even the question here. It also, you know, takes us back to, you know, the level of training, responsibility and all of that for the younger generation. We're not even talking about Gen Z, Gen Y and all of that. It's a lecturer. I mean, back in the days, when you see a lecturer go this way, you go the other way.
Exactly.
And so it's not really about whatever she did. I've seen the student come out to, you know, defend herself and say, oh, the lecturer pushed her and all. Even if you were to roll on the floor, I mean, you would have to roll on it. But for some schools who will tell you that you have graduated, they will give you your gown there and you have graduated. And so it's moral at the end of the day.
And also, you know, the picture story we saw in the Nation newspaper earlier, of our president in handshake with Google executive, you know, that you mentioned something which was very poignant. The fact that the federal government is also interested in advancing technology in Nigeria, which affects young people much more. And so looking at this, you know, our president right there with the Google executive, it looks like something is cooking.
Right, it looks like something is, of course, you know, cooking. He also, you know, said something about planning to mainstream AI to expand digital infrastructure in Nigeria. Let's not even talk about the number of youths that are involved in tech. I mean, actual tech. I'm not talking about the other one.
Yeah.
And ensuring that, you know, these young ones are put to use. And I'm hoping that this would also, you know, extend or be, you know, put into the civil service, of course, to ensure that, you know, some of those laid-back persons are, you know, being utilized properly. So it's good that the president is looking into, you know, mainstreaming this for digital infrastructure. Let's not even talk about IGR, what we can likely get as an alternative, economic alternative, as against relying strictly on oil and all of that.
And we have a lot of young people in this country who are you know, tech savvy. You know, they've gone the length to educate themselves and train themselves, and so this would be such a great boom for them. Right. Which is also what the Tony Elumelu Foundation is doing as well. You know, we saw here that the Tony Elumelu Foundation and the UAE have signed a $6 million pact to empower entrepreneurs. Right, and I am a TEF mentor, you know, a Tony Elumelu Foundation mentor myself, and so we have about 54 African countries to mentor, and these are entrepreneurs, right, from all of these African countries, and so $6 million would be quite a lot of money to startups. Exactly,
startups, that's great. You know, startups form the basis of the economy. They are the largest number of, you know, business owners, apart from, you know, those that have been able to raise themselves. But, you know, these small businesses, this small money that you think are actually nothing, when you count the number of startups that we have just in Lagos alone, and if they're able to pay their taxes regularly, it's a source of income.
Absolutely.
It helps the state also thrive. It also helps, you know, support the government in bringing other initiatives. And it's good that, you know, the private sector is also looking into things like this to, you know, partner with other nations.
Exactly.
And I want to
so it's not only the government.
Right. It's not just the government. It's good that we see private people also trying to help startups. And perhaps it should involve also, you know, meeting with other UAE investors to see how well they've performed and how much they can still do in terms of business. So that's a great one.
And on the tax, you know, reform bills, there's quite a lot of items in the bill. But the part that is really biting Nigerians, of course, is the hike in different, but the federal government has told us over and over again, they know what they're doing, even though from this, you know, the caption here on the Nation newspaper, talking about the House is taking a stance, softening their stance rather on the bill, somewhat like, we are hearing what Nigerians are saying, and so they are opening the dialogue for public hearing. You see the proposal set for public hearing so that all sections of the country can come and present exactly how this is biting them. 70,000 naira is still the minimum wage. And so we have to be able to tax ourselves within that and still have money in our pockets to meet our different needs.
That was quite sarcastic anyways.
Well.
But for the public hearing, you know, it's not about public hearing. Let's see how positive this will turn out to be. But of course, we also need to ensure implementation. I mean, we have so many policies, we have so many suggestions. It's not the first time we've spoken to, experts, spoken to policy analysts and all of that who say the policies are in place. We have, the process to do all of that, but to ensure an implementation, and not just implementation, to also ensure following up on some of the agreements in this, public hearing, in this meeting, to ensure that it benefits Nigerians. But that's very important for them.
Indeed, that's how we'd let it off on the newspaper review segment this morning as we bring in Veronica and Ibrahim. Vero, we saw a wonderful story, I call it wonderful, of a female student who beat her lecturer. Something happened. Do you think that's the best way she would have handled it?
How about Nelson? How about Nelson? Let me say it again.
I already told him. I told him.
Why would that be the best form of defense? Yes, she's
that's what do you think?
That's why she is coming out to say she tried to defend herself. But listening to the lecturer, he was also trying to ensure that his video or his visual wasn't put out without his own permission, because he was just walking past the faculty where she stood, and he was going to the class for his lectures, and he saw her recording that video, and he first said, "Excuse me," and then passed. But he noticed she was recording there. He came back and said that she should delete that video. And that was when the whole problem started, and she resisted, and he wanted to collect her phone, and then whatever happened. She's saying she tried to defend herself because she didn't know what was going on. But I'm glad that the school is investigating the matter.
Absolutely.
To get to the root of it. But I think that she shouldn't have fought her lecturer.
Indeed.
She shouldn't, because he wasn't a stranger. The lecturer said he wanted to confirm that she was even a student in the first place. And so he has a right to do that, to ensure that, okay, this person is his student. But the way things degenerated from that point is a sad one, and it's unfortunate that that happened.
Very unfortunate. Just like as I mentioned yesterday, it's really sad that we have a student, staging that kind of affront against her lecturer, and you saw her colleagues, other fellow students, trying to intervene, stop this, stop attacking the man, and the man kept his calm. He kept his cool. He didn't even raise his hand. He didn't exert his authority. He was just calm. So why that happened in the first place is something I've been trying to wrap my head around to see. Okay, could there be any justification for a student to, be that upfront, affront, at your lecturer? So even though I also heard that she's got one of her parents lecturing in that school. Even if you are the daughter of whoever in this world, you should be able to, where is that home training? Because it goes back to what kind of training they give her. Because that's happening in the citadel, in the academia. Then what else? What's going to happen if it's in other public space,
like fellow student?
Yes, fellow students. So she could have even done worse. So I do not know the kind of defense she wants to put up to say that I had my reason for doing this. And they should also check her for maybe some mental checks, because some people, whatever triggered her that way, is way out of business.
I agree with that point, because your environment has a way of impacting you. So we do not know the environment she grew up and how it is that maybe there's been issues around and they have been taught to defend themselves in certain ways. But whatever it is, I am looking forward to what the school will come up with at the end of the day, and if there will be punishment meted on her, and the consequences for the lecturer, whatever it might be, I just hope that justice is seen to be done at the end of the day. But thank you, Olamide. Thank you, Nelson, for